Bom dia. Queria primeiro agradecer a vocês, porque sábado de manhã com chuva em São Paulo não é qualquer um que está aqui no horário certo, né? Eu estava explicando para o Simon que São Paulo não é Londres, portanto a gente ia começar com 15 minutos de atraso. Se fosse no Rio seria meia hora, mas... eu não vou gastar o tempo de vocês, nem o da apresentação, apresentando o Simon, porque eu acho que a apresentação dele já vai contar um pouquinho sobre a trajetória. A única coisa que eu quero dizer é que faz 6 anos que a gente tenta trazer o Simon para o Congresso da Abrage, não por ele ser quem ele está hoje no Google, mas pela trajetória que ele tem. Ele é um dos pioneiros do jornalismo de dados do mundo. Começou a despontar com o Data Blog no The Guardian, no jornal inglês. Fez um trabalho excepcional lá, tão excepcional que chamou a atenção do Vale do Silício nos Estados Unidos, de onde ele foi para o Google, para o Twitter, e do Twitter ele foi para o Google nos últimos 2 ou 3 anos. Mas ele vai falar mais sobre isso. Bom, eu estou pessoalmente muito feliz dele estar aqui hoje, porque eu pessoalmente venho insistindo nesse convite há tanto tempo, e felizmente agora deu certo dele poder vir. Eu tenho certeza que vai ser muito instrutivo para mim e para vocês também. So, Simon, please.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me here. This is actually my first time in Brazil, so this is very exciting for me. So thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm going to talk a bit about what I do. Like many of you, perhaps, I have jobs that my parents don't understand what I do. And it's kind of a weird job I have, and so I'm just going to talk a bit about kind of what I've done, the kind of data that I work with, you know, the Google data, what it is and how that works, and the kinds of stories that we tell, and yeah, we'll kind of go from there. I mean, this is like I said, I have a strange job, like many of you, I'm assuming, and certainly when I was this age, this wasn't what I was expecting to be doing. Certainly these are the things that I liked when I was that age. I liked writing stuff. I wanted to be a fighter pilot until I wanted to be a journalist. I liked drawing stuff and I liked taking things apart. When I was a child, I would take things apart all the time, but I didn't know how to put them back together again. But this is what I disliked. I disliked maths intensely. It didn't seem relevant to me. It was something that I just didn't understand. I didn't understand why it would be any use in my life. I would often say, I'm not going to need maths when I'm older. And this is what my teachers said about me. Tries hard, but has little natural ability. Which is, to be honest, that's pretty much, I'd say that's accurate now, but there you go. So for me, maths was this kind of mysterious, weird thing that I didn't understand and didn't seem to have any relevance to my life, and I couldn't understand how it would be any use when I was older. But I've had this very strange career. So I joined The Guardian in 1998. I was the launch news editor of Guardian Unlimited, which was the Guardian's website. It was split into bits and the news bit, which I did. And then, because the centre of gravity then was the newspaper, I really wanted to work on the paper. So I moved to the news desk on September the 10th, 2001 was my first day on the news desk. And obviously the world kind of went crazy. And one of the impacts for me was that I had started working a lot with the graphics team. And at that time, it was kind of a weird thing to have like a news editor working with a graphics team. Why we should do that? But the idea was really to bring a kind of editorial sensibility to the graphics that we were doing. And one of the side effects of that is that we collected data. And I thought it would be cool to just publish some of that data. We should just publish the raw data and make it easier for people to access. And that led to the Guardian data blog, which is essentially really a site just to republish raw data. That's all we were doing, and it eventually kind of developed and became part of what we did. So I'll talk a little bit about that too. And then that led to this book called Facts Are Sacred, which you can still get. The iPad edition is pretty good because it's got lots of interactions and videos and stuff. And that's really about kind of how I saw data journalism and what it certainly what it was at the Guardian then, and kind of my philosophy of data journalism. I was lucky enough to go to Twitter and joined them as So I joined them as the first data editor, and the remit there was really to tell stories with tweets. And then a couple of years ago, I joined the Google News Lab, and I'll talk a little bit about what News Lab is. So the News Lab is kind of like the bridge between Google and the news industry. It's really about using all kind of the resources and the expertise that Google has to kind of help the news industry develop and think about its future. And that has different bits. So, for instance, trust and verification, the whole fake news debate, that's a big part of our work. Immersive storytelling, VR, you had Erica here, was it yesterday, I think, talking about that. Inclusive storytelling, about bringing kind of hidden voices into storytelling. And then data. And the data side is really where I work with, and initially it really was about telling stories with Google data, and it's kind of moved on a bit to cover the whole of data journalism as a whole, thinking about what we can do to support data journalism more broadly. But I'll talk a bit about that data and how that works as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of how I got started and how I kind of went from somebody who hates maths to somebody who works with numbers every day. I grew up in a newspaper household. So when I was a kid, we had Monday to Saturday was The Guardian, that's what The Guardian left looked like then, and then Sunday was The Observer, and that was my life. There was always newspapers spread out on the floor in my house, and I kind of miss that my kids don't have like pieces of inky paper everywhere. And also at the same time, I love Richard Scarry. I love Richard Scarry not just because being a newspaper editor looked really cool, or being a reporter, look how happy he is running around. I wanted that job, running around all day with a carrot pen and a notepad. Looks really cool. But there's something about Richard Scarry which really appealed to me. I don't know if anybody read his books here as a kid, but there's lots of these kind of drawings where he would try and take things apart. Now you look at that, so this is a cartoon, right? And it's all the sizes are wrong, and look how it's funny, and there's lots of humour in there. But really, these cartoons, and I'm using the word kind of advisory, really are about taking things apart, seeing how things work. They're incredibly accurate. You learn how an internal combustion engine works from Richard Scarry drawing. There's something about that. I'm trying to understand the world through information and trying to understand how the world works, and not just travelling on a boat and thinking, oh, it gets from A to B, but thinking how it gets from A to B feels to me really interesting. And one of the things that I've done is worked on these kids' books. And when I did them, I thought, oh, this is just a bit of work on the side, it's kind of a bit of fun. But they turned to something, I think, a bit more interesting than that. So they are just books of facts about things like the animal kingdom and the human body and so on. And they're all working with these kind of pretty great designers. Nicholas Beckman did the animal one, he's from New York Times. Jennifer Daniel used to be at New York Times, now works at Google. Peter Grundy kind of invented this kind of visual art. And they're all, essentially, they're kind of full of facts about stuff. And there's something very interesting to me about that. So I have a son who's 9 now, and these are the only bits of my work that he understands what I do, really. But part of the reason I think it appeals to children is that the world is this really kind of grey, nebulous place where there's a lot of uncertainty, especially at the moment. People feel that uncertainty. There's something about facts which kind of can ground you and can make you understand the world kind of clearly. And if you're a child, especially, you want facts. You want that certainty that comes from knowing, the bone structure of a dog, or how many teeth a rhinoceros has, or or how fast a walrus can swim, or whatever it might be. And I think there's something about presenting those facts visually, which is not new. It's historically, this has been around since the 20s. The isotope system has been around since then, and it's because we learn to understand the world visually way before we learn to understand it any other way. The kind of simple shapes that a child understands actually are reflected in the way that we understand the world through data visualization now. And I think that is appealing and it's interesting, and I'm interested in how that occurs and what it is about some things that we understand and love, and some things which confuse us and make us feel like not clever. I often look at a lot of data journalism now, and I feel like I don't understand it. If I don't understand it, then how are other people going to understand it? And some of those images can change the world, and they're not always happy, and they're not always things that are sweet and kind. Sometimes those images are about very difficult subjects. This visualization, maybe some of you have seen it before, the layout of a slave ship, probably did more to kind of inspire people around in the battle against slavery than a lot of other images. So sometimes a number by itself can have a really dramatic effect. I'm just going to show you this. This is the first ever Guardian newspaper from 1821, and in those days, the news was on the back, because the front page was valuable advertising space. The front page, the first thing on it is an advert for a lost black Labrador. And the back page, you can see there, is a big table of data. And that table of data is something which now would be not controversial. It was essentially just a list of schools in Manchester. And those schools had the number of pupils in them and how much money they got. But this was 60 years before education was compulsory. So that data was incredibly political, and the official data was very unreliable. It was collected by people who ran the schools. This was a kind of almost like a leaked set of data. It was kind of a WikiLeaks of its time, and it became a kind of part of that campaign to make education compulsory. So just printing those numbers, it's not visualization, it's something incredibly powerful. And the person that did it said this, I have to look at this reader, at all times such information contains is valuable, because without knowing the best opinions which can be formed of the condition and future progress of society must be necessarily incorrect. I feel like that is a manifesto for data journalism which works now. You might phrase it differently, but essentially, unless you understand the way that the world works, unless you understand the way things are now, things aren't going to get any better, things are not going to change. So understanding the world through data is a way to change it and make things better and improve things. So we're going to talk a little bit about where I feel data journalism is now and some kind of key things about it. First thing, and I've talked about this before, I still feel like it's important. Every year I get some students from one university who contact me about this piece that I wrote called Data Journalism is the New Punk. It was a little while ago. And they always say, oh, is it still really? And I think it is. So I'm going to talk about why that is, why it's still there. So this drawing on the right is from a punk magazine from 1977. It says, this is a chord, this is another, this is a third, now for a band. So now I think that applies to data journalism, and I'm going to show you how. So this is a data set, this is another. Here are some free tools, now be a data journalist. We've never had the access to the free tools that we have now. We've never had the barriers for entry for work in this field have never been as low. And every year it gets better, every year it gets more applicable. And there's loads of examples of people out there who just teach themselves and become great data journalists. If you look at the Data Journalism Awards, this year there are 573 entries. That's a record number. We've never had as many. So I'm director of the awards, and every year I go through all the entries. And it used to be quite a quick job. Now it's not. Half of the entries came from small teams. They weren't all from the big teams that we all know about. 20% of them came from Asia. 51 countries. This is around the world. And the winners are from around the world too, from Serbia, from Colombia. We've got from Germany and Ukraine and the US, of course, and of course, Brazil, one small newsroom, which is around the course from Brazil. So the idea that data journalism is something that belongs to a few people, I think that should never be seen as true. It's definitely not true. It's something that we should all think about. And there are lots of examples of why this is. So these are the kind of visualization you would have seen a few years ago. Very simple to make. They're kind of funny, but But things are changing. So I made this when I was just using CartoonDB. This shows people on social media about sunrises, or I'm going to show you a couple of things. We work quite closely with Alberto Cairo. One of his students made this on his course. Right, and it's fantastically interactive visualization of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and how that works over time. The guy that made this map, which some of you might have seen, literally taught himself how to code and taught himself to do it. It's an incredible thing. It's still out there and it still works. John Bernard Murdoch used to be one of my interns. He's at the FT. He just won Data Journalist of the Year, and he basically taught himself to become a visual journalist. He codes visualizations, he makes visualizations. They appear in the paper and online, and that's somebody who's had the same training as all of us. He's just decided to go that route. I will show you last time. This is something that Berlin and Morgan Post did, and they was using kind of Google Earth Studio, so you can make visualizations out incredibly sophisticated in ways that it didn't used to be the case. When I first started doing this, if you wanted an interactive map, you'd have to go and talk really nicely to the graphics editor, say, well, I've got to do it in Flash, I have to hand code it all, and now you don't have to. This stuff is just there and it's easy and accessible. But life stage journalists can be very lonely. You're often kind of on your own. And part of the reason is that you have kind of skills and a kind of approach that a lot of people don't have in the newsroom. So for instance, if the national news editor left or the metro editor left a news organisation, they would know how to be replaced, right? There's some people say, oh yeah, we just get so-and-so from here, it'll be fine. But with the data editor leaves, people don't often know how to replace them. So that you're often people working on their own in these kind of environments where they're not in big teams. So there are some things that make you feel a little less lonely. One of them is the Data Journalism Handbook, which hopefully some of you have seen. And this is kind of published in 2011. Started off at MOSFET that year. And essentially, it's a lot of case studies and how we did it, guides to working in data journalism. So we just announced is that we're going to be, the News Lab, we're going to be publishing a new version of the Data Journalism Handbook. It'll be translated, it'll be available around the world with kind of examples of how to work in data journalism now, because we want it to be easier and simpler and people not to feel lonely and isolated in the newsroom. The other thing is that it's not necessarily about being a coder, although it can help. There are now ways around that. You don't have to be a coder. One of the ways around it is a tool that some of you might have seen called Flourish. So Flourish is built by Kiln Interactive in London, and basically allows you to upload the data viz so it can be reused. Because anybody knows, once you've had a developer building data visualization, getting it so that you can then use it again is really difficult. It's not a simple thing. People hate making the same thing twice. And so what Flourish does, it allows you to do that by uploading the visual and then publishing it. There are other tools that we've kind of, we're funding that free for newsrooms. Tilegrams is really a tool for making cartograms. Certainly around elections, we've all seen that. People want maps that don't look like traditional maps anymore. They want to reflect the data in kind of normalized ways. And that's where Tilegrams is really good because it allows you to do that. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about Google data, because even though Google's a company that people associate with data, a lot of people don't understand what it is. So this is the kind of data that we work with every day, and I'll talk a bit about it in relation to the US election, because that kind of highlights some of the work we've done. So first thing to say about data is it's really big. There's lots of it. There's 3 billion plus searches every single day. So it kind of takes you beyond the echo chamber of social media. There's a kind of a hugeness about it that really gives you a sense of what people genuinely care about. And that data is incredibly granular, so obviously we can look at searches globally, around the world, then nationally, then regionally, and even down to city level. I can't go below that. I can't tell you what your mum's searching for, or look at what individuals have done, but we can certainly go down to city level, and it's aggregated at that level, which means that we can really show kind of some interesting information. One of the things about this map is I actually used CartoDB for this, and then I took away the map. So you get a real sense of kind of like national boundaries without national boundaries. And you get a sense of where the gaps are as well, where we don't have information, and it reflects kind of where people live. The other thing about data is it's incredibly honest. You're never as honest as you are with your search engine. And so this is something we made showing searches for gun control versus gun shop in the US. So gun shop being about buying guns, control being about controlling them. And you see that on average, people are more likely in the US to search for gun shop. But after a particular shooting instance, that would shift and change in the 12 hours afterwards, except in Kentucky, where people always search for gun shop. Maybe you can really reflect kind of changing social attitudes in that way. So this is something we did with the Washington Post, which was really showing searches around same-sex marriage over time. And it was based on the top related searches. So they kind of categorised them as being negative or neutral or positive. And negative being against or stop gay marriage, neutral being like which states allow gay marriage, and then positive being pro gay marriage. And you can really see how in 2004 there were quite a few states where they were quite anti it, and then it kind of changed and it became much more neutral and kind of almost informational. And I think giving people a sense of using that to look at actually these are changing attitudes over time. We become used to things. Is a useful use of the data. And the other thing about data, which is something I haven't thought about so much, is it's completely immediate. That as soon as something happens, people start searching for it. And this is something that we did around the Paris attacks. And you can see that within minutes, people were searching for them in Europe, which you'd expect, but then it hit New York and Sydney and Madrid, but then it took longer to reach Sao Paulo. But this is often the case with news stories, that they whiz around the world because we want to know what's going on, so we start searching for it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about election 2016 and what we did and the kinds of data stuff we have for that. So we had a page. This page is still live. You can still see it, although the information is a little bit old now, and it's got some kind of percentage search for the candidates and the top issues that people search for over time and so on. And we also did a lot of these kind of quick hit things. I'm afraid that we are responsible for people referring to Canada. But we just did this sort of stuff on the night because we noticed these things starting to spike. Well, that's interesting. And this was something that happened after Super Tuesday. But we can see there's something about the search which reflects a kind of changing mood among the nation. This is the week before the election. You can see how vote Clinton versus vote Trump was neck and neck right up until election day, and then things started broadening out. That would have been ahead of polling. Now the thing is, we've only had this kind of real-time data for the last 2 years. Before that, we had to wait 36 hours to get the data back. Now we can get it back within a couple of minutes. And so it's a new thing. And people ask me all the time, does that mean, that this predicts the future and so on? So my answer to that is I don't actually know. I don't think anybody does yet. It's like when polling was invented, people didn't know that you just didn't have to just add the numbers up. You had to introduce normalization and so on. And so it's a new science. But the idea that a search is nothing is wrong. A search is a really powerful social signal that we just don't fully get yet. So we did a lot of this sort of stuff where we kind of show the campaign over time. This is the whole primary campaign. You can see that top bit, how Trump kind of dominated the primary campaign right from the beginning. Even at the end, where it got down to a small number of candidates, he was really dominating in search there. But one of the issues we have is around geography, because Google data wasn't necessarily set up to be there for people to tell stories with. So, for instance, one of the issues we had around elections is that election boundaries are often different to other boundaries, and we wanted to be able to tell the story of elections in the UK using these boundaries constituencies. So we did this map in 2015. Everybody remember there was an election in 2015, and it was looking for the top searched leader in each constituency. So we worked with a geographer at Sheffield University, helped us aggregate the data to these new weird boundaries. And when we did the map, it looked weird because all the polls were saying that Labour, with the red, and Conservative with the blue, would have been neck and neck. But we were seeing that the Conservatives were way ahead in search. But actually what we found was when the results came in, they were closer to search results here than they were to the polls. And this was the same thing we did just before the vote this time. And you see all those reds? So we really noticed that Labour were way ahead in search. And that wasn't reflected in the polling at all. But as we know, the results were a lot closer than that. So for the US election, it meant that we had county level data, had that much more granular data. This is the US primary vote, and that red is Donald Trump, by the way. So we had this data which is much more granular, at a much more local level, which meant we could tell kind of different stories with it. The other thing we've been looking at is how people search for one thing and then another, this kind of related searches. So during the primaries, we were interested in, if people search for Donald Trump, say, what order do they search for the other candidates in? Does it reflect something around when those other candidates drop out, where that support might go? And you can see, around, if people search for, say, Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz, they would be searching for the other candidates before Donald Trump, so, which was interesting. And that idea of related search is something which is really powerful, and we're just starting to really get to grips with. So this is some analysis we did with our analytics team where we looked at the kinds of areas that were highly searching for one candidate over another. So areas that search for Ted Cruz were likely to search for the oil industry or guns or Chevy trucks. And areas that search for Donald Trump were going to search for kids' activities or minivans or gaming consoles. And if you look at a lot of Trump voters, they were suburban parents. And this kind of that data definitely kind of reflects that. And we've done this, there's something we did with Mike, where we looked at the top TV shows that people search for when they search for each candidate. You can certainly see there's a higher ranking of reality shows in people who search for Donald Trump. One thing we've also done is these kind of physical data installations and data visualizations, which is a new area for me. I've never done things actually there right in front of you before. And we were involved in 5 of the Republican debates. I actually went to 7 Republican debates, which is, you don't get a prize for that, by the way. And these debates, anybody who's ever been to a spin room knows they're pretty miserable places normally. There's like trestle tables and cold coffee and so on. So the Google spin room was not exactly like that. It was much nicer. And that big screen there on the right was this 24-foot screen of real-time live data. So we managed to get a lot of data in real time that showed exactly the issues that people were searching for and the candidates and so on. It became the kind of backdrop to the debates and the election, where I've actually personally been retweeted by Donald Trump 4 times. Which is, I have mixed feelings about that. And you can see this is the kind of stuff we had on. This was actually during the first presidential debate, which Clinton was perceived to have won. It's in Florida. You see searches minute by minute in that debate, and this would update kind of in real time. The other thing that we're really trying to do is, and this is partly because Google is such a huge company, and accessing the data can seem tricky. So we're about trying to open up other data sets as well. So this is YouTube data showing the top viewed videos by each candidate. We just looked at official videos from Canada or their close related packs and how many people watching them. And what's interesting is you can really see what was happening in the months before the end of the campaign. These states, Ohio and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Florida were crucial states in the election. And you can see, which candidates' videos they were watching. So this data is new. Accessing it is something that we're really about kind of trying to open up and make it more available. There's a lot of data within Google around things like Google Play or Maps, Waze and so on, and we think could be really, really interesting. We want to be able to access. And the other thing we did is we worked with the AP to make something called the AP Political Index. The political index is really about indexing maybe 250 odd political terms to combine a kind of political search interest to show what people care about, how much they were caring about the campaign at each individual point. You can see the top issues that people were looking for and so on during the campaign. And the other thing we did was really wanted to open up more and more public data. This is something we did with ProPublica called the Election Data Bot. And the idea of the data bot was often, if you're reporting an election, you have to report these weird bits of the country you don't know anything about, the 8th district of Florida or wherever it is. So we thought we should try and make lots of data available around that. So if you go to this site and you look for that district, you'll find demographic information or previous races or latest polling and Google Trends data about the candidates that are standing in each place to see who is most searched at any time. And you can download that data. Crucially, you can get notifications as well. So when something changes in a district or covering or following, you could access that data and get it. Now, there's a number of things like this where we build these tools where maybe it's like for a niche number of reporters. Maybe there are like 100 reporters in the country that really care about the 8th district of Florida, but we want to be able to kind of help them get that data and make it more accessible. This is something we did for the French election with We Do Data. Everybody knows them. It's a really good little data agency in Paris. And it's looking at the top searched issues for different candidates minute by minute and day by day, so you can see what people search for in relation to those candidates. And we're actually doing this for the German election as well. We're working with Moritz Stefana, fantastic artist, really to identify the kind of the top things that people are searching for minute by minute during the campaign, and around the candidates too, so you can see the top issues and how they get reflected. We were talking about that earlier today, but the idea that you can see what people really care about when they're searching for a particular candidate minute by minute. And this election is obviously happening in September. So the other thing I'll talk about is about collaboration, and there are 2 kind of sides to this, one of which is about kind of collaborating, I guess, with your users, but also collaborating with other journalists. So the interesting thing about data journalism, I've seen this in this field like more than any other almost, is that people are incredibly collaborative. People like working together. You guys will come here and you'll work together with people from different competing organisations. That's not common across journalism. It's very kind of unique stage journalism. I think partly maybe it comes down to the fact that a lot of people are working on their own and quite isolated. And the other side of that is that people are often, I think, more open to collaboration with the users and readers in ways that would have been tricky in the past. In the past, as a journalist, your job was to hand out your opinions and the facts, and they would be gratefully received by the audience who would say, thank you very much. Those days are gone, right? The respect people have for journalists is much lower, but also it means that the opportunity to collaborate with people are a lot higher. I'm just going to show you some of this actually from a few years ago, but to kind of illustrate, this is the first time I really realised this. So the top left there is a map I made of poverty in London. The red areas were the poorest, and the green areas were the wealthiest. So there's something very badly wrong with that map. It's the top left-hand corner. I know everybody can spot what it is. If you're colourblind, there's not good colours put together. And so Gregor Eisch, who used to be as a designer, who's worked for New York Times, he tweeted, your London poverty map is a complete fail. To which my first reaction was, I've just made this. But I thought, well, okay, well, what colours would you use? And we went through a whole discussion. It took about 3 hours on Twitter, kind of going backwards and forwards in colour scales. We're ending up with this one on the bottom right. And what that showed me was actually, if you work with the community, often you're working with people who know more about the data, more about what you can do than you do. You know, you can often work with data sets. When I worked with the WikiLeaks data around the Iraq and Afghanistan war logs, what we found was we actually got in touch with some of the academics who'd also had access to it, and they knew way more about data than we could, because we were like parachuting into this data set and kind of going through it. These guys knew it inside out. So working with the community can make your work stronger and better, and give it more success, and I think set you up for success in the future. But also, I think that's true of working with other people. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this project. It's called Lectionland, and we have a video which I'll show in a sec. And Lectionland was really around trying to highlight election-related issues on election day in real time using real data. And I won't go about this. Let's just roll the video now.
Checking out polling places across their area this election is a very significant source of stress. Political and cultural discussions on social media. Indicators point to record-breaking turnout, and this is a big day to go out and vote.
We're in Philadelphia today because it could theoretically decide who inhabits the White House. The rhetoric of the campaign has been such that people are questioning the sanctity of this process.
I've been covering elections for almost 2 decades. Because of South Florida's history of difficulties for voters accessing polling stations or exercising their right, it is very important for us to report on these issues.
Most newsrooms ask a very important question on election day, which is, who won? It's a great question, it's a super important question. We're asking a different question, which is, who can vote, who can't vote? Where are there problems that are preventing people from being able to vote even though they're eligible?
The story of how voting actually happens at polling places and what the experience is like for the average voter, that's a harder story to track. So the idea behind Electionland was, let's take advantage of technology and data to allow newsrooms and journalists to work together across the country to collaboratively cover the experience of voting on election day. What's actually happening at the polls?
I've covered election day all around the country, and what I would used to do is look at a map and then just drive around to various schools, because that's where polling places are, to see if people had any concerns or to get a sense of what voters were thinking about and talking about that particular day.
It was a little bit of serendipity of being present at the right time, the right moment where problems would happen.
There are 1,100 journalists working on Electionland, either here in New York, out at local newsrooms, or in the journalism schools. So it's an enormous coalition. We're not covering politics, we're not covering the candidates. This is about voting.
Electionland is the first effort to really crowdsource voting place issues in real time with a nationwide network.
We're beginning to see a small cluster of voting machine problems in Philadelphia.
We're seeing a lot of that in New Jersey.
Okay, so machines are
Voter
working.
machines, only one machine.
In terms of the access to information, what we have now is incredibly high-speed access. You know, as soon as something happens, somebody's going to tweet about it or post about it or search for it.
It's going to be more heated because they call police on that.
The great thing about social media and technology is that we have tons of information. The problem is that there's always too much, and you don't know what's verified, what's true, what's misinformation.
We're sorting signal from noise. All those tips are being brought in. Professional journalists are then looking at where they came from, who the source was.
So they were able to verify it.
It would help if we could find out where it was.
Yeah, I think in the Philadelphia area, because I'm going to link to Philadelphia at the moment.
Before you put it in,
Yeah.
you just double check.
All of that data will go through a desk called the catcher desk, and they'll take the social media data that's been verified, other data sets that are coming in, look for big problems, and then pass those through to our reporters who are here writing, as well as about 450 local journalists to follow up on and hopefully publish or air a story in time for the polls still to be open.
Hi Teresa, this is Paul from Living, Electionland.
Is that an issue with lack of Spanish language assistance in polling places
In the Miami area.
Okay.
Data is very valuable because it informs our actions. Everything that is presented through Electionland has been verified already. We do another layer of verification.
There was somebody that explained. Seems to be pretty smooth, at least in the polling stations that we've been to. It looks like that situation that we got the tip was an anomaly instead of a recurrent pattern.
Is that the woman over there with the brother?
She went home, she made time.
We came to this ward in South Philly because we got a tip, and we didn't hear of any intimidation, but we did see a bit of a confrontation over signs.
Yeah, you can take them on the outside of the fence, you just can't have them inside because they're not official signs.
Is that a Philly law? or the
Yes, it is.
rule?
Well, basically, it's for any polling place, really.
There's almost 1,700 voting places in Philadelphia, and Pennsylvania being a swing state, it can certainly change the election, which is why even these isolated incidents are important to keep an eye out for. The tone of the election makes me concerned that things could be uglier than normal on the streets, and that has not happened, at least in any sort of significant way.
Elections is one of the most important things that we cover as media.
Our ultimate goal is to tell stories that matter to our community.
It is our job.
But I think that journalism on its best day can help ferret out truth and can hold government officials accountable and can make this a better, improved democracy.
Democracy requires transparency. It requires us to be able to see what's going on. But this is where data can be really useful. Because one thing to feel emotionally that things aren't right, but actually to know whether or not that's the case is really, really important.
The data overall, I think, is telling us that most of these incidents are isolated and that there aren't huge problems in many different parts of the country. Yes, there have been problems in certain areas, but journalists have been able to go and investigate individual cases and learn that those problems aren't necessarily as widespread as we had feared.
There's been a lot of misinformation out there, but we're dedicated to reporting out the facts, and we're focused on making sure that the truth is what comes out in our reporting and in the reporting of our partners.
Okay, thank you. So I've worked in a lot of kind of big projects. This was the biggest I've ever worked on. It's like, what, 1,100? Okay. There we go. 1,100 reporters. We fed Google Trends data into the system so you could see where there were particular spikes in searches for, say, wait times or for voting, broken voting machines. And they actually really reflected where stories were coming out as well. So it's trying to convert data to anecdote in a really important way. So this is the follow-up. So in the US, some might know there's been a real spike in hate crimes, but we don't know that for a fact because there's no national database of hate crimes there. So documenting hate, which is we're supporting with ProPublica. The idea of that is to bring data to somewhere where there isn't any data, and I think that's a real mission for data journalists. We're often about doing that, about trying to collect data in places where there isn't. And part of the data sets we work with is data from the Google News API. So this is raw information. It's quite hard to get normally, but we wanted to be able to provide, so when some little local outlet has a story about somebody who's been attacked, say, we want to be able to highlight and find that. And one of the things we've been doing with this, we haven't actually published this yet, is working using AI to also read through all the articles and work out what they're actually about. And this is something that we're just working on the moment with some guys, Pitch Interactive. It's kind of interesting actually, just working. I've never worked with an AI visual before, so the idea is really to find out what these stories are about, because you want to know who they're targeting and where they're from and so on. So this being open feels to me like a really important part of what we do, and there's lots of people doing this now around the world. This is the Nacional in Argentina's a forerunner of this, collecting data in difficult times and difficult environment. India Spent, one of my favourite sites for doing this because it collects data in ways that are accessible and useful to people in India. And there are a lot of big organisations doing this in the US now. Having a GitHub page, publishing data is part of what people do. I think that's really important because of this idea of expertise, that there is expertise out there. Well, because it's our responsibility. We have access to data and the amazing kind of privilege, almost, of being able to access this data and go through every data. We should open it up. And this is one of the things we've done, is we have a GitHub page. Every day we put big data sets on there, and the idea is to make them available, allow people to kind of play with them, experiment with them, do stuff with them all the time. We have this all the time where people then contact us, say, oh, I made a visual using this, and they're way better than the stuff that we can do. I think that's really important. We can talk a little bit about process, because I feel like people always ask about process, and actually it hasn't changed that much recently since I've been working in this area. Being a data journalist is 80% kind of boring, and there's just the 20% that's good is really good, but actually there's a lot of boring stuff in there as well. This is kind of how it works for me, and it really hasn't changed that much since I was at The Guardian, actually. So often you get data from different places, you can be sent it, you can have it, there's a breaking news story, you want to kind of experience that or work out what's interesting around that. And then you kind of have to know what you want to get out of it. I got asked this yesterday, like, where do you start with the data? So I often start with kind of the journalistic questions we're thinking of. What does this mean? What would happen if you compare this place to another place? A lot of data journalism is very simple statistics, as we know. It's about percentage change or things growing over time, whatever. And then this difficult stuff is the stuff in the middle, and it's still difficult. PDFs, where data goes to die. They still exist, they're still out there in the wrong format. Then merged cells, data in weird places. This is still problematic for us, 6 years into kind of the modern phase of data journalism. But at the end of it, I put output there, because in a way your output is like a kind of programmer's output. It could be different things. It could be an article. It could be a visualization. It could be just the number on social media. Getting one number sometimes can be this huge challenge that takes forever, but it's really interesting and tells a story of its own. So that process hasn't changed that much, and so we're looking at ways that we can help streamline some of it, and some of the boring stuff is still going to be there, I think. That sense of achievement you get when you found a story at the end of a really tedious bit of data analysis will still be there, I think, for data journalists. Design matters a lot, and I think that the way that it matters has changed. The way that people consume news has changed a lot over time. We don't read news in newspapers anymore, which makes me sad, even though it got me the chance to show that kid. But this is the latest data from the Reuters Media Institute report, just came out a few weeks ago. And it shows that there are a lot of countries now where people are consuming mobile first news. And that's how it's going to be, and it's only going to get more. By the way, and certainly, the work that Javier does at Boxing, kind of doing data viz for mobile is really valuable here, because I think this is how things are going to get. This is actually my favourite chart from the report. So half of us use our smartphones in bed for news, 42% do it on transport, and then 32%, nearly a third of people access news on the toilet. This is how we do it, or in the bathroom. We've got to have a gap somewhere, haven't we? Somewhere, a space somewhere. So we've been working on on visualization a lot. We've got Alberto Cairo is a consultant design director with us now, and we thought, what if we just work with amazing visual artists and say, here's a budget, you can do what you want in any way possible, it just has to be mobile friendly. You should check out some of the stuff you see on the Google Trends site. We worked with Accurate, Georgia Lupi's team at Accurate, on this visual during the election, which works really nicely in mobile. You can just play with the thumb, and it shows the kind of issues that people search for around the world for the US election. It's not just American election, with each candidate. We've also worked a lot with Maurice Stefana. He wants to do something with us around food searches. So we gave him like 19 years worth of food data. And he kind of worked on this technique where basically it would cover searches for months and years, and the colours, the darker colours, are later years, essentially. And see by month, you can see where seasonal interest in food happens. So he did a lot of these charts with lots of different food types. It's called the Rhythm of Food. You can still go and check it out. My favourite bit of the Rhythm of Food is charts that look like food. Donuts, pears, onions, and eggplants, and fish. Look at the fish up there. That's where the data actually reflects something that actually happens in the real world. One of the other things we've thought a lot about is about trying to reflect kind of the changing technology we have access to. We made this visualization around Brexit, around the Brexit vote. We wanted to show the questions that people were asking in different European countries about Brexit. So let's call it kind of 3D-ish, isn't it? So what if we did it in VR? And I thought, well, this is kind of an interesting experiment. If we give ourselves 3 weeks, we'll make this visual, the words in VR, that actually, it's basically kind of quite a basic visualization. It's just a map. It's just a map where you click on bits of the map and you see different things. But actually, there are a lot of restrictions about using VR, which some of you may have come across. One of which, you can't have tons of text, because people can't read it, because they're kind of going like this. You have to ground people, they have to know where they are. And the reason you have to ground people is because you can make them physically sick. Visualization can make people physically sick, which I've never heard of with any other kind of field of visualization. These are challenges, right, that we have to face. How do we deal with that? So one of the things we're going to be looking at in the next year is maybe giving people like a toolkit for making basic visualizations for in VR quickly and easily, because it's expensive and difficult otherwise, and we don't think it should be. And then, once things have become more sophisticated, in some ways they've become less sophisticated as well. So one of the things we've all fallen back on now is GIFs. I refuse to call it GIFs, I'm sorry, GIFs. And so this is something that's made because we wanted to show where Project Loon, and heard of that, is where the internet balloons and Google Earth, they did it in Peru where they have flooding, the red areas flooding. So just making these kind of GIFs. There's now a whole set of people doing them. Lena Groger, really should check out her work. It's really great, and she's the expert now. She's got some really great course on how to make data GIFs. These are some examples, from NPR, the New York Times, and some of them are quite simple. They're just showing map stuff. Some of them are quite sophisticated. There's some incredible arts happening on GIFs now in ways that they're shareable and accessible, and you can all use them. You can send them to your friends, and they're visible. And one thing I want to think about is how can we make that process easier? Is there ways that we can build tools that would just allow you to generate more sophisticated GIFs more easily? We've got one that creates a very simple GIF. So I'm going to get that. This is called the Data GIF Maker. If you want to do 2 blocks fighting each other, it's very easy to get. This is free now, and you can generate a GIF out of it. The other thing, and this is a broad issue, is that we live in really kind of difficult times, right? There's a lot going on in the world that's depressing and difficult, but at the same time, there's never been, I think there's much of motivation to make data visualizations human and fun. When we're working, who are we working for? Are we working for ourselves or to impress colleagues, or are we working to impress our readers? And so a lot of visualizations now are kind of fun, and I think that's a really important thing. The stuff that Georgia Lupi does, Accurate, is fun and human. We worked with the Data Sketches team, and it's Nadia and Shirley at Data Sketches. They do these kind of collaborations where the two riff off each other. And one of the things we did was with Google Translate data, where we look at the top words that are translated into English from other languages. And they're working at ways just to make it beautiful. and in ways that be enticing, that are understandable, that aren't just for the regular people who always understand data. There'll always be some people who just love data anyway. And I think there's something there which is really wonderful. This is something, we haven't published this yet. This is with Joaquin Gonzalez, who used to head the interactive team at The Guardian. And he was really interested in how we search for how to fix. And it's kind of beautiful. So I think we're going to publish this in the next few weeks. So this shows in the US, people, the pink dotted lines are kind of the global average for each thing, how we search how to fix. In the US, you're way more likely to search how to fix a light bulb and a door, and the toilets, and the sink, look at the sink there, but less likely for windows and washing machines. In Brazil, apparently everybody knows how to fix the door, and the sink, and the toilet especially, but windows. Windows in Brazil, I want to know what's going on there. I bet you're really confident with washing machines, so that's good. And then you look at, this is obviously in learning, the work of Mona Chalabi, used to work with The Guardian. You should all follow her Instagram account, beautiful hand-drawn visualizations of often quite difficult issues in a kind of simple way that's accessible and understandable and not patronizing. You don't have to be patronizing to be understandable. I think that's worth remembering. So I'm going to end really talking about memory, because memory, to me, in data journalism is really important, and I feel it's under threat. I just want to talk about that a little bit. Anybody know who this is? Anybody does, literally, I will give a prize to. Come on.
What was it?
Anybody? Sorry? No. No. This guy's called Hal Creeley, and what he did was he was the editor of the New York Tribune, and he did one of the first investigative piece into members of Congress and their expenses. And they actually got Abraham Lincoln into big trouble because he'd overspent on one of his expenses. Everybody know who this is? Very good. You don't get a prize for that, it's easy. So John Snow was an anaesthetist in London, just a doctor, basically. And they had regular cholera outbreaks in London in the 19th century, and he thought, we should map this. Why don't I just start dots on a map? I don't know if you can see it. Those black marks on the map are deaths from cholera, and bang in the middle of the map is a street called Broad Street. It's now called Broadwick Street, and the middle of Broadwick Street is a water pump, and all the deaths were around this water pump. And prior to that, people thought cholera was spread by miasmas in the air. So they saw, this is interesting, they took the handle off the pump and the cases stopped instantly. So it changed how we see the world, it changed medicine, changed everything about the way we understand viruses, and that's from a map. If you'd written this down, we wouldn't have had the same impact. I really hope people know who this is. Thank you. The most influential and still the best book on data journalism, precision journalism. Also did the Detroit Project, and the Detroit Project, was this incredible work of social science combined with journalism. And the reason I hire these people is this is important, because if you know about these things, it can influence your work now. So this work's old, right? But it's still really important. So there's a direct line from this to and this work around the Detroit riots to something that we did on The Guardian around the riots in London. There's a direct line. You wouldn't be able to have this without Philip Meyer's work. And for that study where there were riots across the UK, we kind of mapped them using Google Maps, mainly using England and Wales. But then have the ability then to compare the instance to where people lived who were arrested, and map that against poverty using free tools. We got hold of court records, thousands of court records from the courts in the UK, literally by forcing them to, because we had to get the Ministry of Justice to make them give up these records, which they didn't want to. And then we could do things like map where people lived and where they were arrested as well, to get a real sense of how people kind of travelled on the day and where people travelled to and from during the riots. And then we were able to look at social media and how people were looking at rumours on Twitter and so on. And none of this stuff would have been possible without the work that Phil Meyer had done. There's a connection there. So having memory is really important. But at the same time, digital disappears. These are really important bits of data journalism. From Chicago Crime Reports, MP's expenses, which is the thing that I worked on this slide, one of the first big crowdsourcing exercises, none of these things work anymore. None of them work anymore. And the reason they do is because code rots and code changes. And whereas like in a technology company, like where I work now, if you build something, you have to be able to think about whether it's going to be around in 5 years' time. Journalists often we do things that are ephemeral. They're here today and they're gone tomorrow, literally. And if this stuff disappears, then how are we going to know? How are we going to do the next piece of work that's like the Detroit riots follow-up? Or how are we going to remember, oh, John Snow and Matt Cholera, it'd be interesting if we did that. You know, this stuff will always be new to us, and it shouldn't be. We've got a whole, we're standing on these amazing shoulders, and we should be able to learn from that. So I'm going to end with this guy. I've looked for better quotes around better people to end with, but I keep coming back to him. James Cameron was a British journalist, not director of Aliens and Avatar, different guy. And he was an amazing, very traditional reporter in the 50s and 60s. Was in Korea, the Korean War and Vietnam, and he did some great documentaries. It's one worth checking out. They're all on YouTube now. And he wrote this, which is the new world will be a place of answers and no questions, because the only questions left to be answered by computers, because only computers will know what to ask. And he wrote this kind of in a slightly scared way, that we were worried about what would happen with technology, but actually in the end that we rely on computers so much we would forget how to ask questions. I take it differently. I think that actually, you know, we live in an age where we're able to do incredible journalism because we have access to processing power and computers in ways that we never did in the past. And that's meant that our journalism can become better and stronger, and the role of data journalism in a place now where facts themselves are under threat has never been more important. Work you do in this room has never been more important. At the end of it, all about telling stories, just in the best way possible. Thank you.
Fazer uma breve conversa aqui, a gente ainda tem uns 20 minutos. Se alguém tiver questões, vou pedir que faça por escrito, e deveriam ter pessoas para recolher os papéis, acho que elas vão aparecer em algum momento. Enquanto isso, eu vou começar aqui fazendo algumas perguntas para o Simon. Eu fiquei muito feliz ao ver a sua apresentação, aliás, parabéns. Acho que uma das melhores que eu já vi sobre jornalismo de dados, quando você fez a conexão entre o trabalho do Philip Meyer nas demonstrações violentas em Detroit em 1967 com as manifestações violentas em Londres ou na Inglaterra em 2011. Porque quando eu vi o trabalho que o Guardian estava fazendo naquela época para tentar identificar quem eram as pessoas que estavam participando dos protestos, de onde elas vinham, para onde elas iam se manifestar, imediatamente me veio à cabeça o trabalho do Philip Meyer, que foi talvez o trabalho fundador do jornalismo de dados no mundo, pelo menos nesse aspecto de identificar cientificamente quem eram as pessoas que estavam protestando em Detroit em 67 e quem não estava protestando, quais eram os motivos de um lado e de outro. Quando vocês imaginaram aquela cobertura em profundidade para entender melhor as causas dos protestos em Londres, vocês se lembraram do trabalho do Philip Meyer imediatamente? Ou foi uma coisa que já estava introjetada dentro de vocês e que naturalmente apareceu?
So, interestingly, this is something that actually came up to Paul Lewis. Yeah, Paul Lewis is an investigative reporter in The Guardian, editor in San Francisco Bureau, and he had been aware of this film as well. I was aware, because I'd seen some of precision journalism and I knew it was there. But when we wanted to do it, it would just be kind of cool to kind of get those court records, and it meant that when the Prime Minister at the time, David Cameron, said the riots were not about poverty, well, we knew where people lived, and we knew that they lived in the 10% poorest places in the country, to the extent that I heard afterwards that the government had a leak inquiry because they thought we'd got their data. which is cool, right? But it meant that the difference, I guess, with Phil and I's work was that we already had a database of people we were able to try and interview, whereas people had to go out into the streets and just interview people. We already knew who'd been arrested, so we had a starting place.
A gente, com as muitas ferramentas que você mostrou, que o Google hoje oferece, a gente é capaz de identificar tendências de opinião pública, coisa que até alguns anos atrás apenas quem tinha acesso a pesquisas de opinião poderia ter, né? Quer dizer, os dados do Google Trends, que mostram o que as pessoas estão buscando ao longo do tempo, e agora em tempo real praticamente, funcionam de uma certa maneira como um índice, um indexador, uma proxy do interesse das pessoas. E ali você mostrou o caso das buscas por Trump e por Hillary, mostrando como as buscas por Trump no final da eleição descolaram, indicando uma eventual possível vitória dele. No Brasil, a gente tem um caso interessante na eleição de 2010 para presidente da República. Nas vésperas do primeiro turno, disputavam 3 candidatos, Dilma Rousseff, José Serra, Marina, e houve uma mudança na intenção de voto. Dilma estava caminhando para vencer no primeiro turno e ela parou de crescer e começou a cair um pouquinho. E abrindo os dados das pesquisas de opinião do Ibope, a gente identificou que quem estava mudando de voto eram os eleitores evangélicos. E aí o Daniel Bramati, que está aqui presente, fez uma busca no Google Trends para saber o que as pessoas estavam buscando associado à palavra Dilma. E ele notou um pico enorme de buscas por Dilma aborto. E foi a partir daí que a gente fez uma investigação mostrando como nas igrejas evangélicas havia muitos pastores pregando, dizendo que se a Dilma fosse eleita, haveria uma mudança na política do aborto, que o aborto seria liberalizado, etc. Como isso se mostrou interessante, o Daniel foi pesquisar o que se falava sobre Temer, que era o vice da Dilma pela primeira vez naquela eleição. E a palavra que apareceu em primeiro lugar era, não lembro se era demônio ou satanista. O que se provou também uma coisa de longo prazo, né, bastante imprecisa. O que você acha que é possível a gente esperar daqui para frente sobre esse tipo de correlação entre dados, opinião pública, até como tentativa de prever? Então, uma pergunta aqui que eu já emendo, que a pessoa diz que há um mistério hoje no Brasil, porque os brasileiros não estão indo para a rua, como foram no passado, para pressionar o Temer. E por que seria isso? O Google pode nos dizer?
So, it's a very interesting time because, like I say, we didn't have this data before. So now we have this real-time data. It's like you're kind of an archaeologist on stuff, uncovering stuff that you just wouldn't know in the past. I think it's an incredibly powerful social signal because of the honesty of it. Your search is completely honest. It's not like you're not trying to present yourself to the world in a certain way. This is what you really care about. It's like, this is not related to politics. One of the top questions on Google consistently is, why is my poo green? Right? So there's something really honest about search, which is really interesting, and maybe it is related to politics. But you know, where we start, I think we need to understand better how to weight the data and how to reduce the noise. You know, so what we found, for instance, in some of the primary elections in the US, if we just looked for the name of the candidate, it really matched it matched votes almost exactly to the percentage volume. But in other states it didn't. Like states where they had different kinds of elections, you'd have to look for a vote or add in caucus or whatever it might be. So I think there's kind of constant weighting which needs to take place. But it's a really interesting predictor of something, we just don't know what it is yet.
O que você pode nos dizer sobre... O que você pode nos dizer sobre essas descobertas que vocês estão fazendo no Google, dessas novas ferramentas, e para onde isso deve caminhar? Você acha que em algum momento no futuro esse tipo de estudo sobre o interesse das pessoas traduzido através das buscas do Google podem eventualmente até vir a substituir as pesquisas de opinião, de intenção de voto? Você acha que isso pode ter um impacto maior sobre a percepção do poder público para estabelecer políticas públicas, ou seja, examinar as buscas no Google ou coisas que o valha para tentar determinar prioridades em políticas sociais? Qual que você acha que é o futuro do uso dessas ferramentas e desses instrumentos?
I think it is really interesting. We know that people in authority like looking at Google Trends to get a sense of what people are thinking. I think, could they replace polling? Maybe. I would say it's more complementary right now, that actually it's a good complement to traditional polling. And I think, data journalism gets in trouble by trying to predict the future all the time. You saw this, the focus on just polling data was a big focus for a lot of organisations ahead of the last election, and I think that was a mistake. I think it's a very easy mistake to fall into, but actually thinking more about analytical data journalism is really explaining what's going on in the world, explaining the truth about things, that feels really important to me.
Uma pergunta muito interessante. Simon, você acredita que existe hoje no jornalismo de dados uma concentração muito grande em ferramentas e menos em reportagem? Também quero saber se o Google pode replicar no Brasil projetos como o Election Land e o Election Databot.
So I like all of those ideas, and if anybody wants to work with us on either of those things, Marco is around, and we should talk about it. I think there is a bigger thing about, with data journalism, people often remember the data part, they forget the second bit, the storytelling aspect, and I think, I got asked yesterday about which tools do I need to learn, and I feel like it's about learning the tools that you need for your job. I'm terrible at some of the tools that other people are great at, but it's more about that I'm good at the ones I need to be, and then I'll learn. But knowing how to tell a story, what an interesting question is, that feels to me like the most important part of your work. If you know that, you can always learn how to make a map, right? That's easy. But learning how to tell a story is harder.
Vou fazer uma pergunta mais pessoal. Como foi a transição de sair de uma redação onde você editava um blog, que você tinha autonomia para publicar praticamente o que você quisesse, embora trabalhando junto com outros jornalistas, sobre quase qualquer assunto, para trabalhar numa empresa de tecnologia, primeiro no Twitter e depois no Google? Eu pergunto isso porque imagino que muitos jornalistas, alguns aqui presentes, já passaram por essa transição e outros talvez venham a passar, dado a diminuição do tamanho das redações. Qual o tamanho do choque? O que você perde e o que você ganha?
So, I found leaving Guardian very difficult because I've been there for 15 years. And it was like leaving a family, a dysfunctional family for sure, but leaving a family, like any newsroom, right? And I found, the shock, I guess, there were some things, the shock was like, God, so we've got resources. You can do stuff that you want to do. You've also, and I found this both, and this applies to both Twitter and Google, there's very much kind of a can-do attitude, that you can get things done. But at the same time, I've always found that you can't rely on other people to make your career good. You have to have some, and this is more of a career thing, I think you have to have some idea of where you want to get to. Because people will know what they want you to do, but they won't know what you need them to do. So you have to do what they need you to do, not what they want them to do, whilst doing a little bit of what you want to do.
Outra pergunta interessante. Como o Google, você vê que o Google não é uma coisa mais que as pessoas recorrem apenas para perguntar o que elas não sabem, elas estão querendo que ele resolva o futuro delas também. Como o Google pode ajudar a introduzir o jornalismo de dados nos jornais locais, nos jornais do interior? Porque essa pergunta vem uma constatação que ela mesma faz aqui, de que essa prática, o jornalismo de dados, ela costuma ser muito mais frequente em grandes redações do que em lugares onde se tem menos recursos. Qual maneira? Existe uma maneira que o Google pode fazer isso?
I think that certainly with the News Lab, we have a real focus on local media, and that covers all the different bits of the News Lab. My colleagues who work with immersive storytelling and conclusive storytelling and trust and verification, fact checking, and so on. This is why we built these tools, things like tilegrams, or we've worked with the Flourish team to build that, the Data Maker. These are really aimed at reporters who don't work in big organisations. If you work at the New York Times, you're probably okay in terms of resources and staff and stuff. If you work at a small local organisation, you want to create things that help you in that work, and there's going to be more of that coming this year.
Emendando nessa questão, acho que na verdade uma continuação, se fosse para escolher uma ferramenta, se fosse para começar por algum lugar, quem está verde ainda no jornalismo de dados, por onde você acha que deveria começar? Qual seria a primeira ferramenta? Seria o Google Spreadsheet? Seria o Google Trends? Qual que você acha que é um bom começo, que a pessoa não vai se assustar e já vai começar a se familiarizar com os dados e com o uso dos dados?
So I think what's interesting to me is how many of Google's basic tools, like spreadsheets or docs even, are used by journalists just day to day, like people use Google Docs as CMS. I think, it depends what you want to do. I think if you are, we want to find out what people are thinking. Google Trends is a great place to start, and that's always been developed, and it shows exactly where the interest is and so on. You want to make a map. Things like Carto is still like an amazing, simple map making tool that will make a styled map for you. And often people start with Google Maps and they use Carto to help style it up, and the two things work together really well. I think there is no shortage of tools out there. I really think that Flourish could become one of those tools. That's why we want to support it, because just the amount of different visualizations it can have is endless. It's only up to the people who work with it. So one thing we've done, we're funding a template developer to build new templates in Flourish, and somebody to go and train people in newsrooms. So I feel like that could be, in a couple of years' time, could be the definitive tool for data journalists almost. Okay, so Flourish has a sign up. It's flourish.studio. You go there, there's an email sign up. For newsrooms and journalists, it's free. So this is where you should contact Marco. Sorry, Marco. And he'll be kind of triaging requests for access.
Tem uma pergunta também muito interessante sobre metodologia. Como vocês fazem para definir quais são os níveis de cruzamento de dados que são confiáveis, por exemplo, no Google Trends? Quer dizer, como saber que uma busca feita numa localidade muito específica sobre determinado termo é representativa ou não? Ou você já, quando cai abaixo de um determinado número de buscas, você já elimina? Como é que funciona isso?
So one of the questions I get asked quite a lot is, why don't you release like numbers, just numbers? And there's a reason we don't do that, part of which is that knowing there's a million searches something is only helpful if you know that there were 5 million searches in total, or 1 billion searches in total. So unless we can reveal that, it's very tricky. So the data we do have is normalized, which means that it's basically as a percent proportion of search. So you can compare Sao Paulo to Rio, even though they have different populations, because the data is normalized in both places. And then we have thresholds, which means that if it's like only very few searches, we don't show it.
Bom, nós temos aqui a pergunta de $1 milhão. Se você conseguir responder, todos vamos sair daqui ricos hoje. Que é, como o jornal impresso deve se portar diante da queda da taxa de leitores? A solução?
Actually, there is a solution. No, I love print. I grew up with print, and I'm very fond of it. I think, but you can see it's incredibly expensive, right? Printing and distribution. Like when I was working on, we had those 4 deadlines every day. Some had to make the trucks. If you don't make the trucks on time, there's a fine. You have to buy the ink from China or Canada, is it? And the paper comes from China. And this is expensive, and it's hard. I don't know how they can survive, but But at the same time, in a lot of markets, in a lot of places, people still read newspapers and they love them, and that's where the news organisations get their money from. I don't know the answer. I feel like being open to change is the most important thing, and being thinking about how those, and nobody's really come up with the best solution to this, how people, those people that love the paper and the newspapers, how do we serve in a world where you're not going to sell a million papers every day. Sorry, that's $5.
Duas perguntas sobre pesquisa de opinião e Google Trends. Se você pode elaborar um pouquinho mais, se existem trabalhos já feitos do Google em parceria com institutos de pesquisa de opinião, como você acha que isso pode caminhar melhor no futuro, que tipo de complementariedade eles podem ter até para diminuir, aumentar a confiabilidade, diminuir a maldita margem de erro.
So, interesting, I think that this work is going to come from academia. I don't think it's going to come from, I don't think it should do, I think it needs to come from an independent outside. So the Pew Institute, the US Pew, I've just done a report on Flint in Michigan where they had water poisoning. And that's based on using Google Translation with it. That is really good methodology for using trends data. There's also, they've done some more work since then on people searching around HIV and all this sort of stuff. So I think you know what it needs, and we're really encouraging this. We have a research team now who work with research institutes, and their work is kind of amazing, and that's going to help us develop methodology. It's not going to come quickly. It's not like we can just say, oh yeah, we know how to do this. I think it needs experts who are really good at research to come in, and I would rather we do that properly than rush it and do it badly.
Acabou de chegar mais uma pergunta sobre esse mesmo tema. A pessoa estava ponderando que, obviamente, no Google Trends, se a gente olhar só o Google Trends, a gente não vai ter a opinião das pessoas que não têm acesso à internet, que não usam o Google. Existem essas pessoas, óbvio. A gente não pode julgá-las apenas por nós. A gente está, infelizmente, chegando perto do nosso limite. Eu queria perguntar o que você imagina que vai ser a tendência do jornalismo de dados daqui para frente. Você acha que é uma coisa que vai se espalhar nas redações, se espalhar na cultura jornalística, até um ponto que deixe de existir a terminologia jornalismo de dados e passe a ser apenas jornalismo e os dados vão ser naturalmente parte disso? Você acha que você vê essa cultura se espraiando pelo mundo, você que agora tem uma visão mais global, ou ainda é uma coisa de nicho e sempre vai ser uma coisa de nicho?
So, I think it's obviously already becoming much more mainstream. There are a lot of reports now, probably wouldn't call themselves data journalists, because we work with data every day. You know, there's kids who grow up hating maths and learning journalism, specifically not to have to do maths. You know, I think are getting fewer. I do think that the way it will change to have more specialist data journalists, like people who just work for report on health. You know, Sarah Cliff, I'm probably not here, I'll say, but Sarah Cliff, who works in healthcare in the US, is kind of incredible, and she's really good at data, but she understands this subject really, really well and is focused on that. I think that's what we're going to have, more reporters like that who will be specialists in a subject, but will understand how to work with data and tell the story better in that way. And yeah, so I think there'll always be room for data, and there's always be room for people who are good at data in the newsroom, but I think that the skill sets are changing all the time.
E você acha, para terminar, você diria que você vê o jornalismo hoje com otimismo, com pessimismo ou com ceticismo?
I really believe that we have the best jobs in journalism, everybody in this room, because you're already working with data, you're working with innovation, technology, just journalism is always at the forefront of trying to tell stories in new ways, and data journalists are at the front of that. So I'm optimistic and excited about the future, and like we were doing this talk in 5 years' time, I really genuinely have no idea what will be in it, and I think that makes it interesting.
Bom, queria agradecer muitíssimo Simon Rogers. E acho que infelizmente vocês vão ter que sair para depois voltar, porque agora vem a palestra do Rodrigo Janot e vai ter uma briga pelas cadeiras. Então, obrigado, gente.